The 10 best residencies in 2024. Today we're going to talk about the best residence permits in 2024, citizenship facts, and more. Mexico residency is a very popular option for Americans due to the proximity to the homeland. Mexico offers a similar time zone, and in fact the same time zone. It's just very convenient for an American or Canadian who is tied to work obligations back home. Let's say you have a remote job. Moving to Mexico could be one of the best options due to the proximity, plus you're staying within the same time zone. It's really hard to beat this combination. Plus, if you really want to go to Mexico by car, you can just drive your car across one of the southern borders in the US and you could be in a large Mexican city in a handful of hours. It is all very possible. Mexican residency has become very popular because Mexico also offers a path to citizenship. You're looking at a 5-year path unless you decide to give birth in Mexico or you decide to marry a Mexican citizen, then the 5 years could be shortened, potentially. Mexican temporary residency requires income proof or proof of savings. You can apply directly at the consulate in the nearest city, and the requirements are actually quite soft. We're not talking about a very difficult process. The only caveat is that Mexico increased the income requirements exponentially over the past number of years, and this is all based on supply and demand. Someone who immigrated to Mexico 8 years ago had a much easier path than someone who immigrated to Mexico today. I'm talking about the income requirements, and they're not really in correlation with the cost of living requirements in Mexico. However, the Mexican authorities have made it more difficult because they can now kind of cherry pick and only choose Americans and Canadians that have a solid income, whereas before it was just much easier. And if you want to get in for savings, then that amount has also increased, but it is an option. If you don't have the income, you can get in by proving savings. Another very popular option that is rarely discussed is actually the regularization program, where you can obtain Mexican residency. Let's say you overstayed your visa and you still have the entry stamp in your passport. I know that now you actually get the ticket and it's all done through automation, but let's say you got in 2023 and you haven't really left Mexico, meaning you overstayed your visa, you could actually apply for Mexican residency through the Mexican regularization program, which has been renewed every year for the past, I think, 5 years or so, or even longer than that. And there's a good chance that Mexico will also continue this program, in 2025. However, this is a risk that you're taking and it's not advisable. There are also other visas, of course. You can get an education visa, you can go to study in Mexico, you can potentially get residency by investment, so there are some options worth looking into. Mexican citizenship takes 5 years. So you're looking at this kind of path, right? Certain countries offer a much quicker option, like citizenship by investment, what we're seeing in some Caribbean countries, or in Argentina, you can get it much faster too. Of course, there are also exceptions. Say you give birth to a baby in Mexico, then there would be an option. Or if you marry a Mexican citizen, that would also be a shortcut. Vietnam residency is a very popular option. What's great about Vietnam is that you can now go ahead and open up a company and secure a 3-year temporary residence permit. It is renewable, but conditions apply. As I have discussed in a previous video, a friend of mine who obtained temporary residency by company formation in Vietnam actually was not allowed to renew his residence permit because his company didn't really have that much activity. That's why I've been stressing on this channel that you should only incorporate a business and get residency if you really have the intention of running a business. It should not be dormant. Don't do it because, again, they can revoke your residence permit, and if you want to get it again, you would have to repeat the whole cycle of applying, and there are a lot of requirements. We're talking about accounting, opening up the company, making a deposit, and then of course there's also yearly things you need to do. If you get audited, I know people that got audited, and so that is not advisable. If you want to go down this path, make sure you incorporate a legitimate business that is in fact in place to sell a product or service. And if you can prove to the authorities that your business has generated a profit, then you will likely be able to renew your visa versus you just having the business in place to get the residence permit, but there's no actual transaction volume going on. I know this is common sense, but we're being asked this question a lot by our clients who want to incorporate in Panama, in Argentina, and of course they want to do this to get residency. But there are other options available where you don't have to be held accountable in the event that your company doesn't generate any volume. So do this if you want to incorporate the business. You can start a local company in Vietnam. To start certain businesses, you actually have to have a local partner, which is a bit of a downside. However, there are certain categories where you as a foreigner can own 100% of the business. Vietnam is an interesting country because it offers one of the best lifestyles in the entire world. At least that was my experience when I had the privilege to live in Vietnam. I definitely had a phenomenal time. I enjoyed every second of it, and I don't regret for one bit having gone there in the first place. I'm really grateful and appreciative of everything that I had experienced in Vietnam, so I can recommend it to someone who wants to spend time in the Far East. However, Vietnam does not offer a path to citizenship, and there's also not really a path to permanent residency. I know people who have lived in Vietnam for 10 years, for 15 years, and they are still on temporary residency today. They were not able to get permanent residency. Despite of being married to Vietnamese citizens, they were not able to get permanent residency in Vietnam. It is a very challenging feat to accomplish, so we don't recommend this path unless you want to go to Vietnam and start a business, become a temporary resident, and hopefully after time these requirements will kind of soften and permanent residency could become available. Bulgarian residency is another popular option for entrepreneurs who want to start a trade representative office in the Eastern European nation. There's something important to note here. For you to get in on this special deal, because it doesn't really apply to all companies, you actually must have had a foreign entity for a number of years. So you can't just be like, hey, I'm going to open up a foreign company today and get Bulgarian residency by company formation the next month. It doesn't work like that. They want to see that you have had this company open for a number of years. Obviously, you have to prove it through documentation. It can't just be a verbal statement that confirms the status of your company, right? So they want to see physical proof that your company has been incorporated, say in America. It's been active since 2021, and you may qualify for the trade representative office in Bulgaria. And by the way, this option is not just popular in Bulgaria, it is actually becoming more popular across the European continent. What's great about Bulgaria? Well, it is a very interesting country in terms of taxes. You're looking at a flat personal tax rate of 10%. And the same is also true for corporate taxes. You're looking at 10% max. That's a very lucrative deal for a European country because given the fact that Bulgaria is part of the European Union and now also Schengen, they joined Schengen early on this year, it's really great to see that Bulgaria retained the low personal and corporate tax rates, making the country a very interesting destination for startup entrepreneurs as well as existing business owners with overseas companies. Something I wanted to note about Bulgarian residency is that there is a path to citizenship. However, it is a lengthy path, and to naturalize in Bulgaria, you actually have to show proof of Bulgarian language skills. You must be proficient in the Bulgarian language, and that can be a real challenge depending on how easy it is for you to learn the language. If you're in Bulgaria just for residency benefits and purposes, you may consider not going down the path of preparing yourself to apply for Bulgarian residency because it is a lengthy path and the requirements are quite difficult, as they are in many European countries where language and history requirements are a must. Of course, there are always exceptions, but as an immigrant to Bulgaria, you're looking at a not so easy path to citizenship. Another con of the Bulgarian residency is that unless you become a citizen of Bulgaria, you will probably not be able to own any land, right? If you want to own the land your property is built on. You would either have to be Bulgarian, you would have to be naturalized in Bulgaria, so you have become a Bulgarian citizen, or you are a citizen of the European Union. Bulgaria is a wonderful country if you're interested in hiring tech talent. This means, let's say you have some kind of digital business, which is most likely the case if you want to immigrate to Bulgaria by using the residency by company option, then you really want to hire tech talent. I mean, a lot of people do, and given the competitive salaries in Bulgaria and the staff that you would have in Bulgaria is bilingual, like tons of people in Bulgaria speak multiple languages, so this is a definite plus. Paraguay Residency is a great option for people who want to either collect a paper residency, they want to spend very little time in the country. Now with temporary residency in Paraguay, you're looking at a 1 day per year minimum stay requirement and 1 day every 3 years for permanent residency. Obviously, these requirements can change any time. However, Paraguay is also home to a territorial tax system where most foreign sourced income would not be taxed in Paraguay. And of course, there are exceptions that may apply, but as a rule of thumb, foreign sourced income should remain tax-free while you are a legal tax resident in the beautiful South American country of Paraguay. What's also interesting about Paraguay is, of course, the low minimum wage that you could utilize when you incorporate a local corporation that would do business within the Mercosur geographic location, where you could truly capitalize on the regional markets. The 1% maquila law would be a phenomenal option for an entrepreneur who wants to capitalize on the local markets, right? It's a phenomenal low tax deal. However, it also comes with many requirements, such as compliance with customs. Say you import and export products, between Paraguay and Brazil or Paraguay and Argentina, then you would definitely have to comply with customs. You can also open up a regular local company where your tax rate would be up to 10%. Obviously, there are certain things you can deduct, and that would then not be contingent on your business activities within the Mercosur region. If you decide to open up the normal Paraguayan corporation, you could do business with any country worldwide and pay up to 10% in corporate taxes only. Paraguay is a Spanish-speaking country and English is not widely spoken. So if you come to Paraguay and if you want to speak English, then I recommend you to stick with the fancier neighborhoods in Asunción, because that's where you will face the highest probability of getting by with English, even though Spanish would be helpful. Now, Paraguayan citizenship is a tricky one as well, and Ron, who is also a YouTuber, has discussed the official statistics, revealing that not so many people are naturalizing in Paraguay, and it is actually the same picture in other countries like Peru, Panama. So that's also something to consider. While there is a path to citizenship in Paraguay, the naturalization probability is not particularly high, and that may have to do with a lot of different components, such as the nationalities of people applying, their language skills, their history skills, and potentially also Paraguay being a little bit more strict with its approval process. Don't get me wrong, there is a path to citizenship. If you have permanent residency in Paraguay, there is a path to citizenship, but it is not a very common feat to accomplish. Surprisingly, many Americans are considering Italian residency by investment. Italy is becoming a very interesting option for a number of reasons. There is the startup option where you can invest 250,000 euros into a local company, which you could own yourself, or you could find an existing startup that you want to invest in, so you don't have to found the company yourself. You can be a co-founder with another person, or you could just invest in an existing company, right? So there are different options available. In terms of business categories, there aren't really a ton of restrictions, but it would have to be something innovative. It doesn't have to be the newest high-tech thing, but it has to be something innovative, something that demands your ingenuity. How do we look in terms of taxes in Italy? Well, Italy had a 90% tax break for new residents, so people who didn't reside in Italy for the past number of years, but that was scraped this year, unfortunately. So if you want to get residency in Italy now, you were looking at a 50% tax cut, assuming that you are a new resident and you haven't lived in Italy for the past number of years. So the 50% tax break applies to all tax brackets, and you would have to live in Italy, right, on its territory, and it's nationwide. So there are no restrictions restrictions in terms of living, let's say, on the island of Sicily or the island of Sardinia, or living in Rome or Milan. No, you can live anywhere in Italy and qualify for a 50% tax break. You can become a citizen of Italy. So once you have obtained permanent residency and you have lived in Italy for 10 years, then you could apply for Italian citizenship. There is a shortcut to Italian citizenship. It's in the event that you have Italian ancestry and you can prove it. And there are a couple of ways on how you can do this. You can use ancestry.com, or if you know for sure, for certainty, that you have someone in your family that was Italian, you can prove that, say, through a birth certificate and other documents, obviously, then you may acquire Italian citizenship. It is a path that could take many years, but it's a path worth looking into. Needless to say, Italy offers one of the highest quality of life in the entire world. The Philippines SRRV program has become one of the most popular retirement options for Americans and Canadians in Asia, pretty much. Why is the Philippines doing this? Well, it's a great way for the country to raise revenue. It is a phenomenal deal because it is truly one of a kind. The Philippines offers permanent residency. When getting approved for the SRRV program, you actually get permanent residency in the Philippines. So this is really permanent. There are some annual fees that you have to pay, but it is truly permanent, unlike in other countries like Thailand and Vietnam and Malaysia, where the residency requirements are not so clear and not as stable as in the Philippines. You know, in the Philippines, you really have permanent residency. You have to pay annual fees to keep your residency intact, but it is a really good deal that the Philippines offers. Citizenship is a tricky one in the Philippines. It is very, very unlikely that you as a foreigner would naturalize in the Philippines. The same can also be said about land ownership. A foreigner cannot own land. As a foreigner, you cannot own land in the Philippines, so you would have to own the land through a spouse or a different person who is Filipino. You can't own the land yourself. That's why a lot of foreigners opt for condominiums. The Philippines is a beautiful country, rich in nature, and home to some of the most hospitable people that I have ever met. And the Philippines is really a great retirement destination. The cost of living is relatively low. The beauty of its beaches and many more positive components make the Philippines a worthy destination for North American expats. Uruguay Residency is another popular option for retirees in South America. You can get residency in Uruguay by proving savings. Let's say you have Social Security income, you have a pension from Canada or Europe, Australia. You can move to Uruguay and become a legal resident of Uruguay. The requirements are actually quite easy, and you can also obtain permanent residency in Uruguay. Uruguay is one of the most, if not the most European country, or that feels like the most European in South America. Walking down the streets of Montevideo may have many similarities to walking down the streets of a city like Malaga. That's why so many Americans, Canadians, and Europeans have chosen Uruguay in recent years. Citizenship is possible, but again, not one of the easiest ones, but there's a path to citizenship. But again, you have to comply to all application requirements before you may get approved. The Malaysia My Second Home program offers residency to Western expats looking to settle down in Malaysia. The program was first introduced in the early 2000s, and it's been around for more than 20 years. And it's been very popular until very recently, where the program underwent a lot of changes. Despite of the changes that were applied to the Malaysia My Second Home program, so many Western expats still favor Malaysia over other countries. And I think it has to do with the fact that Malaysia offers an amazing quality of life, a low cost of living, beautiful beaches, great weather throughout the year, and it's also home to some of the nicest people in Asia. The MM2H program recently relaunched, offering a new visa deal available in Johor Bahru. To qualify for this option, you would have to purchase real estate in Johor Bahru. The minimum investment amount is kept much lower than if you were to purchase real estate in a different city in West Malaysia. The Sarawak Malaysia My Second Home program is another popular option, and this program didn't undergo a lot of changes. I mean, they did make some changes, but not so drastic changes as were implemented in West Malaysia by the Peninsular Malaysia My Second Home program. I personally lived in East Malaysia for some time, and it was one of the best times of my life because of how this place made me feel. I had a really hard time leaving, and I've always looked back and be grateful for the time I was able to spend spent in Malaysia. It was phenomenal. A country that's quite similar in climate, but located in a very different geography, is Panama. Panama residency can be obtained by incorporating a Panamanian corporation and sponsoring yourself. And initially you get temporary residency with a path to permanent residency, assuming that you meet all the temporary residency requirements, which include you paying yourself a salary and paying payroll taxes in Panama. This is a requirement to convert to permanent residency. I would recommend this option if you have interest in building a company in Panama, whether that is a locally focused company or if you want to do business internationally, but make sure that the company is generating a profit, because again, you have to prove that you have paid yourself payroll taxes to convert to permanent residency. So you don't want to end up like people in Vietnam who incorporated a business that didn't generate any volume, and then they figured out that they couldn't renew the business because they didn't meet their requirements. So I want to communicate the requirements in the most crystal clear way possible to set the right expectations for yourself, because again, you don't want to waste a couple of years' time, especially in Panama where you have a path to permanent residency. You don't want to have to redo the whole cycle. So please, if you do this option, then have a real business, maybe hire an employee or two, and definitely pay yourself a salary, pay the payroll taxes, pay all the taxes that you have to pay to the Panamanian government, and eventually you can convert to permanent residency. Citizenship is possible in Panama, but it is not so easy to obtain, and we can see this based on the data of how many people naturalized in Panama. It is not too common. Spain's Beckham Law regime is a very popular option for first-time residents who want to take advantage of the temporarily available territorial tax regime that Spain offers. There is a very important consideration to make here. This is not a residence permit. So while you may be able to just pay taxes on your locally sourced income in Spain while you're on the Beckham Law regime, you don't have a path to citizenship with this visa. It is capped at 6 years. It's only valid for 6 years. And once it expires, you would have to get a new visa. This is how this works. And again, this is not even a residence permit, because as a resident of Spain, you're subject to taxes on your worldwide income, which you're not when you opt for the Beckham Law regime. It's just not the case. So it is not a residence permit, but it is a tax-friendly option, or a tax-friendlier option for an American or Canadian who wants to live in Spain for a couple of years, maybe try it out and take advantage of what's available. To become a citizen of Spain, you're looking at a 10-year path on residency, but again, with the Beckham Law option, the 10 years wouldn't even start. So you would have to get a residence permit, and you would have to pay taxes on your worldwide income in Spain. Spain decided to discontinue with its golden visa program. It is not the first EU country that made this step. So if you want to come to Spain now, let's say you are from outside the EU and you want to come to Spain, you would have to find a different path to residency, whether that's through an education visa, marriage, some kind of business dealings. There will be options, but the golden visa programs, they're gone. And finally, Argentina Residency. Let's talk about the South American country that offers one of the highest quality of life in whole Latin America. Argentina offers the retirement visa, which allows you to live in the country for 3 years. It's a temporary residence permit that can be converted to permanent residency once you have proven ties to the country. And after having been in the country for 5 years or more, you could apply for Argentine citizenship, which is not renounceable. After you've lived in Argentina for at least 5 years on residency, you could apply for Argentine citizenship, but it is unrenounceable. Once you have obtained Argentine citizenship as a naturalized person, right, you naturalize to get citizenship, you're gonna have a really hard time renouncing it. There are very few, if any, conditions under which you could renounce Argentine citizenship. So obtaining Argentine citizenship may sound like an easy decision, but it is often a lifelong decision. In most cases, it is a lifelong decision that you carry with yourself. You're going to have this Argentine passport and citizenship, and like I said, in most cases, in almost all cases, you cannot renounce it. There are some exceptions for native Argentines, for natural-born citizens, and there may be an exception or two for naturalized citizens, but the average person will not be able to renounce Argentine citizenship. And if Argentina moves ahead with worldwide taxation, and certain countries are talking about it now, like what we're seeing in France, then this may be a decision that you cannot revert. Which of the discussed residence permits are you most interested in? If you're interested in obtaining a residence permit in Argentina, Paraguay, Spain, Italy, or Bulgaria, please contact us now. You should see our website displayed right on the screen. There should also be a link below this video. Thank you so much for watching Nomad Elite. We appreciate you and we see you on the next video.